Hey guys, welcome back to the Disciplined HQ podcast. I'm here with Mitch Muller. If you know anything about Christian lifters in the space and dudes who help people get jacked, Mitch is the man to talk to. So, Mitch, I'm super stoked that you're here.
Corey, I appreciate it, brother. Yeah, I'm excited. It's been a while. Been waiting for this to happen, so I'm excited that we're here.
Absolutely. All right, man. So, how this starts is the faith and fitness journey. And looking back through your Instagram, it is completely interwoven. Like, there is nobody who I've seen who's blended faith and fitness better. So, which came first, the faith or the fitness in your life?
For me, it was definitely faith first, and I was very, very blessed at a young age. I mean, my parents split when I was one. I have a twin brother, and so we were going back and forth between mom's house and dad's house. I know a lot of people have had the split family type of thing. It's like you have two different families, two different Christmases, like the whole thing going on. And but I was very, very blessed because my mom, she was more raised in like the Catholic Church, but she always felt this calling from God to just to go to church to feel close to Him and all that. And I just give her so much props every time I can because she went through a lot and still took us to church. And she worked two or three jobs at a time at some spots when we were kids. And so she took us to church even if we didn't want to. We were that family that there was a period there where we went like twice on Sundays and again on Wednesday nights, like that type of thing,
Hmm.
because she needed those just other believers around her because of the season that she was walking through, just being by herself, single parent, like the whole thing. So she took us to church, and I was very fortunate for that, being involved in the youth ministry and stuff there, going on summer camp and winter camp with the kids, especially in like junior high was when it was like really 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 big for me. So I always felt like close to the Lord. I was first baptized when I was 11, I believe, is when
Okay.
I had somewhat of an understanding of what I was doing and what I believed in. And then again, I've been baptized a couple times since then, kind of rededicating to my life to the Lord around, I believe I was 23. And then my wife and I got baptized again. It was just kind of a spur of the moment type of thing right before we got married. We wanted to do it together. And it was
Oh,
just kind of
wow.
like this cleansing, this just like we don't want to take anything into our marriage that, that's attached or whatever it was. So, but anyway, so I mean, I've been around the faith for a really, really long time. But it's so cool because the Lord has been, I felt Him with me from a very young age. And that's been such a
Yeah.
blessing. So He's helped me grow and just step by step, little by little. And so faith definitely started first before any of the fitness stuff. The fitness stuff came, I would say, more in high school. I come from a sports family, so my dad's side of the family is just it's all sports. Like he was a big football guy, played in college, almost played for the Chiefs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, blew out his knee in preseason, and back
Good.
then
Yeah.
knee like surgeries and ACLs and all that stuff were not as easy as they are today. So that
Yeah.
just completely wrecked his career. So he was done after that. He doesn't like talking about it very much
I'm
because
sure.
his life would have been different, and I wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened. So, but
Oh,
anyway, like
really?
he was football. I'm an uncle that was a crazy good baseball player, and he was a scout for the Yankees. Has a World Series ring, like the whole thing.
Good,
So
man.
it's like my brother and I were raised in this sports environment of like play everything, right, and see what you like. And
Yeah.
I kind of took a liking to basketball above everything else. But in high school, I was basketball, football, track all year long, and did a lot of stuff. But senior year was more of like, introduced to more lifting. I mean, it was
Mm.
actually sophomore, junior year, but fell in love with the gym, fell in love with working out, and that's where a lot of that started for me. So when I got into college, like I had options to run track in college, but I didn't really love it. So I'm like, I'm not gonna really do this if I don't love it. Like, I'm not gonna try and go
Yeah.
to the Olympics or anything.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but I have this competitive nature, right? So I wanted to do something, right? So I
Yeah.
took that, that competitive nature and I was like, well, I'm just gonna, I've been in the gym for football and all that, so I'm gonna just do this consistently. So I just stuck with it. And that's where I truly fell in love with the process. I fell in love with bodybuilding. And the whole bodybuilding thing didn't happen until years later, but I was just in the gym and lifting because I loved it and I wanted to be as
Yeah.
big as I could. Like that was the
Nice.
goal. So
And what was your position in football?
I was the smallest linebacker on our team.
Really?
And yeah, so I was, I mean, about 5'11", and at the time I was probably 170 pounds. And so, I mean, our
Golly.
linebackers were like 200 plus. Like we had, I
Yeah.
mean, the year before, so it was junior year, our team won state. I didn't play that year, unfortunately. But the guys were big. We had big boys on our team.
Hmm.
So we did pretty good. But yeah, I was linebacker. I wanted to be a wide receiver. That's where I started out. But we had really, really tall wide receivers, like 6'4", 6'5", and our coach really preferred them.
Goodness.
Like, yeah, he liked the taller guys. Even at the slot position, which normally those guys are smaller, but coach was like, "Oh, but
Yeah.
I'll put you." I was a little bit bigger, so as far as compared to the other guys, so he put me on defense. It was still fun. You get to
Yeah.
hit people really hard, so that was fun.
Absolutely. And wait, so were you like a stronger dude starting out?
Mm.
Because like a linebacker position, that's not exactly like a timid position.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it was because I hadn't, when I started lifting, I started to put on muscle. I wouldn't say easily, but
Hmm.
I think it was just compared to the team that we had at the time. Coach was like, "Oh, you're a little bit bigger. You got some muscle on you." I was, you know, a little bit taller than some of the other guys. I wasn't tall, but I wasn't short either, and I kind of fit
Yeah.
that position. I was fast. I could catch the ball. So as far as like defensive interceptions, things like that, I
Yeah.
felt like that's kind of why he put me there, where I can get around defenders and get to the ball really fast. That was, I think, why he put me there. So yeah,
Nice. I love it. Man, I
yeah.
love your story starting out because I definitely have a similar situation coming from a divorced home and the church being involved at the beginning. And it's one of those things where when that happens, you get to see like the beauty of the church and like why we have the church because we need that community to walk through us with those hard times and to like lift each other up, not condemn someone for being a single parent,
Hmm.
but recognize the need of the kids in that situation and the parent as well. That God's grace covers these people as well, and we are called to lift each other up in those situations, even though it's not an ideal situation. The fact that the church stepped up the way that they did to help your mom in the way that she was able to have that humility is so
Hmm.
impressive because it's not something that is easy. Like having seen my mom do the same thing, like it was tough, but it was one of those formative times of my life. So that's a beautiful thing to hear about,
Hmm.
how you grew up and the church
Hmm.
life you
Yeah.
had. And so after high school, do you say you or almost ran track or didn't run track in college?
Yeah, they were giving me a partial scholarship, and that's where I was like, man, this is going to be a really big commitment, like going into all
Yeah.
that, and that's where I mean, if I'm not passionate about something, then it's really really hard to stick with it for a while because it's that passion that kind of carries me through, because you're going to have bad days, right? There's going to be bad
Yeah.
days that come, especially in training, and for I mean, I was good. I went to state junior and senior year for the 400 and like I was
Oh, wow.
good, but I wasn't like 43 seconds good. Like for the the Olympics, I wasn't. There was a guy that I think that was running a 47, 48 was the
Oh
was
my
the was
God.
the fastest that the college had. And for me, I would think I ran a 50, almost 49 at state. Um, it was pretty close. I was really mad that I didn't break it, but I was
Yeah.
like, in order to take that many seconds off of an event that's a sprint is really hard to do. And I was like, I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm like built for this. So yeah, it was. I was like, okay, I could do this, but I was like, I don't really see this as my future. So I just started to work out because
And the
that was
400
fun.
meter sprint.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Hmm.
400-meter sprint, like that one is
It's
aside
brutal.
from yeah, like aside from like a mile, like the
Hmm.
mile sprint, or I guess the mile time, whatever that race would be called, but a 400-meter sprint is like the ultimate in long suffering because it's just long enough that you can't just like go the entire
Hmm.
time,
Yeah.
but it's short enough that you're still just suffering through the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a rough one. It was brutal. I don't really miss it.
Oh. No, I'm sure. I think I maybe got my 400 time under a minute, and I was so stoked about that. So to hear someone being 40 something seconds, that is insane.
Yeah, when we went out to practice, I think when I first tried track, because I was skinny when I was a kid, so I was long distance running. Like in middle school, I just wanted to be competitive. I didn't care like what we
Yeah.
were doing, what sport we were playing in PE. Like I wanted to dominate everybody. So that's what I did. That was my
Hmm.
goal in my head. So we used to do this long distance run every Friday called the Friday Fun Run. It was almost a mile in middle school, and you would win a soda if you won. Like that's what the PE teacher would give you a soda. So I won it every day, every Friday for a whole year, like because that's what I wanted to do.
Really?
Yeah, and I just gave away the soda. I didn't really even like care about that. I just wanted to win. So I was
Yeah.
like long distance because that's what I had because I was skinny. And so when I got
Hmm.
into high school and I just did track my junior and senior year. But when we were at practice, trying to figure out, coaches trying to figure out what events to put you in. And I
Yeah.
just, I was like, you know what? In my mind, I was like, I'm going to think logically about this. If I could be done with my event in a minute or less, let's do that one. Like, I don't want to be on the track for like however long doing this long distance stuff. And also, if I'm trying to put on muscle and like look and I'm working with my physique that I want to have, I can't be doing
Hmm.
this long distance stuff. It's not supporting my muscle growth whatsoever. So,
Yeah.
sprinting supports muscle growth. So let's do that.
Yeah.
And I think I
Absolutely.
ran like a 59 my first try, and coach was like, "Yep, you're going to be in the 400." And then I just got better from there. So it was fun. It was a fun time.
That
I
is
miss it a little bit. I
crazy.
do.
A sub 1 minute 400 the first time. That is insane.
Hmm.
Golly. And so you were thinking about your physique at this time? Like, were you had bodybuilding entered your mind? Like you said, you entered or you were lifting, but
Hmm.
was like the thought of bodybuilding and like getting bigger something that you were actively pursuing?
So yeah, the thought of getting bigger was absolutely there. The competitive nature of bodybuilding was not even in my mind. It was the furthest thing from
Mm,
my mind at the time. So in high school, a lot of it started from this. Honestly, it was like a root of rejection because I mean, if I were to trace it back, I've had to go through this and like process the reason why I did what I did and the way I thought what I thought. And a lot of it was due to my upbringing with my father because in that household he was Superman. Like he did everything. Like he's like practically built his own house. He can work on cars. He was a chef at one point. Played football like for the Chiefs for a little bit. Like and he was good at everything. He still is. And so I being raised in this environment, I wanted to be good at everything. So that kind of, I mean, as we've already talked about, it's like my competitive nature. I wanted to be good at all these different things. But then I found out pretty quickly that getting, especially into high school, when you start to kind of reflect and you're more like, oh, I don't, you start to talk to girls, and I start to realize that like my inconsistencies or the things that maybe I'm not good at, I compare myself to other people, like especially to the other guys in school. You become more self-aware. Then your
hmm.
mind starts to play tricks on you and stuff. And I found out that girls were the one subject I was not good at. So I had my issues in high school, and I started to feel rejection, just being turned down, by girls left and right. And I was that kind of kid that wore my heart on my sleeve. I was one of those that the girls were like, "You're going to be such a good husband one day,"
Oh
but like, oh,
gosh,
they don't
that's
want
the
to be your
worst.
they don't want to be your girlfriend or anything like that. They want this bad boy type of guy that treats them
Yeah.
terribly and all of that. So that was me, and I was like, "What's wrong with me?" And I had
Hmm.
zero confidence whatsoever. And when it came to sports, like if I'm on the basketball court, I'm a different person. But like off the court, it was like so I felt this lack of confidence, and I was tired of being turned down. And so that's what started the gym life for me. I was turned down by a girl. It started when I was 14. That was like freshman year, and I just felt like this heartbreak. That whole thing is a long story, but that day I went home to my apartment gym, tiny little gym, got like a few dumbbells, a few different machines, and that was it. And I worked out for like 3 hours. and I was crying. I was like crying in between sets, and like I hated the way I felt, and I made, which is dangerous, an inner vow that I will never let someone make me feel like that again. And
Mm,
that's something from years after that that I've had to process and get through. And the Lord has showed me that like these inner vows and the stuff that you made, that's not of me whatsoever. Like it's coming from
yeah.
this root of rejection that I need to pull out of you. So long story short, that's how it all really started for me. Is I had this root of rejection, and I was like, I'm gonna show them, all these girls that that turned me down and whatnot. And fast
Yeah.
forward to to senior year, the girl that I really liked asked me to prom, as opposed to me asking her. And I mean that's neither here nor there, but that's what started it. So every time I got in the gym and I worked out, like there was this inner little broken boy part of me
Hmm.
that was leading the way as far as building muscle, being confident, like that whole thing. That's what started the fitness, lifestyle for me. And of course, you had the competitive stuff on top of it. It was just, this environment for really pushing myself to become better in any way, shape, or form. And so it started that way. But then, of course, over the years, the Lord showed me that this isn't about proving anything to anyone whatsoever. I'm doing this because I love it, because the Lord gave me the gym in this fitness lifestyle as a blessing to take care of this temple, and of course the competitive stuff, which I really love to do. So I see it as like this blessing from the Father of like, here, like here's something that you love, here's something that you enjoy, but it's not something that now I do for my appearance or because I need the approval or the applause of anybody else. So yeah, that's basically what started it for me. And I don't think yeah, it was well into my 20s when I first started, actually competing. And that came from being in the gym all the time. It was like, I was like a 6 days a week kind of guy. And
Hmm.
at the time, there was only open bodybuilding. So that was the only division in bodybuilding. And I never saw because I was never big, I was never a massive guy. But
Yeah.
then they came out with men's physique in that division, and I would see guys at the gym, like the older dudes, that are like, "Hey, you ever thought of competing? They got that new division, where the guys wear board shorts and stuff." And I was like, "Nah, I don't really care about that." And they kept saying it over and over again, and I kept, you just kind of look in the mirror. You're like, "Can I do well?" And then I start looking stuff up online and seeing what the guys look like on YouTube, and I was like, "Well, maybe I should try this." And so that's where I started. I just like, you know what? I'm going to give myself 4 months. Since being a personal trainer, being a coach, I was like, I didn't even have the money at the time to hire a coach. So I was like, I'm going to do this myself for 4 months.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to go through it. Did my own diet, was extremely disciplined, the most I've ever been in my life. And I was like, I'm going to get as lean as I possibly can, and I'm going to learn how to pose, and I'm going to do this thing, and we'll see what happens. And the first two shows were a week apart from each other. I was in Arizona, so the first show was like in Tucson, and then next week
Hmm.
was like a little bit closer to home in Mesa, Arizona. Like both natural shows, but they were still NPC shows, which is the main type of thing. But so I did those and ended up winning my class in both of them. So
Oh,
that,
wow.
yeah, and I was surprised, and it was amazing because most of the competitors that were in the top five had coaches, and these coaches were well known in Arizona. So all the coaches are up there, and they're yelling at their athlete to like keep your abs tight, and like when you're up there. And I had nobody. I went down to Tucson, drove there by myself. Like I, in between the morning show and the night show, I was just like in my car, just like sleeping, like it was just me. And at the end, they were like, "Whose guy is that?" Like, and they kept looking around, asking the other coaches, "Whose guy
Yeah.
is that?" And so then I had a multiple of them trying to get me to join their teams and all that.
Hmm.
But it was fun. Like I just wanted a trophy. That's all I wanted. That's all I cared about. I'm like, I just want a place. That's the only thing. I'm like, I will be
Yeah.
happy with that. So I was pleasantly surprised, and then got hooked after that. I'm like, okay, I must be good at this, or I have a physique that could do well. So
Hmm.
that's when I started to pursue it after that, and it was fun. It was
Yeah.
definitely a fun period of my life. So
That's awesome. So you said you were a personal trainer. So did you go to school like for kinesiology, or was that just something that you picked up on your own after college?
Yeah, so it started in college because I mean, I love the gym, love being around that environment, and I was actually influenced when I got into college by most of my high school football coaches. They were all firefighters. Our head
Mm.
coach was a captain, and all the other supporting coaches worked for him. Like they were all firefighters, most of them. Like our wide receivers coach was like, I mean, amazing firefighters. And so a lot of us as seniors, like once we graduated, I feel like half of our seniors carried over into the community college to do the fire program there because it was one of the best in the state at the time
Mm.
because you don't need to go to some most of the fire academy stuff was at a community college or was through a community college. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
I don't really even know what I want to do yet. It wasn't like a huge passion or anything, but the firefighters are awesome. Everyone loves firefighters. It's like they're built. A lot of them are jacked. Like they're
Yeah.
the manly type of men. I was like, that's what I want to do, something like that. So I did like a year and a half of like firefighting studies and all of that through community college, and then I realized towards the end of it that I liked the fitness side of training to become a firefighter. That's where my
Mm.
passion was. When it came to the medical stuff,
Mhm.
I could care less. I was like, I don't really want to do this. I was
How
in
did you
community.
respond to like the medical stuff? Like, where if you saw like someone with their arm cut off, because I've got friends who are firefighters, like they have to show up to like suicides and like all the worst, like most gruesome things.
Oh, they
And
see
I
more of
thought like
that.
I would,
Yeah.
yeah,
They see more of that than fires, that's for sure. And that's something
yeah,
that I think a lot of the guys within the program were realizing that, like, oh, we don't just fight fires all the time. Like, 95% of the time, maybe more, it's car accidents, or it's home stuff that happens at home, or you're doing just insane, like just ridiculous things, like even
yeah.
pulling cats out of trees and stuff. It does happen. Like I've heard some crazy, some funny stories. But yeah, they see some stuff. And I remember one of the classes, one of the guys that were leading the class, they were telling stories, and he's like, "You see some stuff that you have to process, but a lot of the guys will make fun or make jokes around what they see in order to deal with the stuff that they see." They said that one time there was this like older man that had like passed away in his home, didn't know anyone else, so no one was checking on him, and he was around for a really long time. And I think they someone ended up getting into his house like weeks later. This guy had been like dead in his home,
Whoa,
and his dog started to, it's weird to say, eat him.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
so it pretty much ate his whole face. So long story short, his head was rolling around. The rest of his body was there, but his head was like in a different room because the dog had like,
good
yeah. He's like,
lord.
so he's like, when I tell you this stuff, this is what you see. These are the crazy
Yeah.
things that you come across, and they had stories for days, and that didn't bother me too much. I feel like seeing stuff like that is some people can be queasy, but I think to me, it's like, well, this is just part of the job. But it was more the
Mm.
medical side of, I mean, it's really, really detailed. I'm like, I didn't really want to go into the medical field, and I don't think I realized at the time just how much like medical like training they have to go through. I don't know, maybe I was naive. I don't know. But that I was like, well, I just really like the physical side of doing this, of like climbing the ladder,
Yeah.
being all in all your gear, like pushing yourself to the
Hmm.
limit, getting through these types of scenarios. Like that's what I like to do. So yeah, so it was. I know a lot of great men that were firefighters. I have family that are firefighters, so it's a lot of respect for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you did this journey, or you did your own physique competition. Was this, what year was it?
I want to say it was 2014.
Okay.
If I were to remember right, yeah, it was. I was at Arizona State at the time. I remember I had just like gone through the old saying that breakups make bodybuilders. Like that's
Yeah.
when you're in that place, it's like I don't have a commitment to anybody right now. I'm just gonna focus on me. It ended up being at that time. So I think it was my senior year because I took a lot of time in community college to figure out what I wanted to do. So by the time I actually got my credits and got to Arizona State to graduate from there, it was much later. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that was yeah, I think it was 2014 was the when I first started competing when I did those first two shows, and then stayed pretty much consistent for the next about I think 5 years, 4 or 5 years after that, doing at least one show a year, and I think the most I did was three a year. Um, but it's
Good.
hard on your
Three
body.
shows in 1 year.
Yeah, it's hard on your body. It really
Mm.
is. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, could you tell what it's like when you get down to like that 4% body fat level and like how long it takes to safely get there?
Yeah. So I believe it was my first two shows where I was extremely disciplined. I did 4 months, so 16 weeks of prep for that, which is a little bit longer than what you would normally take.
Yeah.
Most people sit around the 12-week mark or 13 just to give you that extra
Mm.
week. And I'd say those first two shows, and then the last show that I did in 2018, those were the leanest that I've ever been. The ones in between were like so-so. I think it's because I wanted to prove to myself at the very beginning that I could do it. So I didn't have a single cheat meal like whatsoever for 4 months straight. Like it was the most disciplined
Goodness.
ever. Like I was to the point of like, oh, I can't put that in my body. I wasn't even giving myself like really, refeeds. And like, so, I mean, I had to change my approach between those. But getting to that low body fat percentage was, to me, it made the most sense of like, I'm going to start this process eating as much as I can while still dropping body fat. So it's the minimum effective dose. So that
Yeah.
comes into training and that comes into nutrition. So what I'm gonna do is like as much as I can without like while still seeing results, I should say. So I was still doing like 5 or 6 days of lifting each week, but I was like, okay, my training's gonna stay the same. I want my muscle to stay on my body, so I was lifting to
Hmm.
grow the entire time. Like that didn't change. I was like, if I could still, I mean, obviously the last few weeks you're not lifting as heavy because you're depleted. You don't have much left in you. But my
Yeah.
goal was still to train hard. And if I didn't have the energy to train hard, at least for the majority of that time, then I was doing something wrong. So I think my calories started at like 3,000 a day, which is kind of high for some people.
Yeah.
But when you're working out, 6 days a week, and I was walking to class like downtown in Arizona. I think it was like 8 to 10 blocks that I was having to walk every day. So there was a lot of movement. There was a lot of so I had to
Hmm.
make up for that with food. But I put myself in like a 500 calorie deficit, and I started cardio. I think I started at 30 minutes for 6 days a week, and then it went up to 40 minutes, and then 45 minutes, and I think that was it. I did that for a month at a time, like each month, and then the last month I did it as I felt like I needed. So it was just very, very simple. It was a progressive approach. I wasn't going to
Hmm.
start by cutting my calories like crazy, like I'm going to do this and I'm just going to, and I was just radically consistent. That's all I
Yeah.
was. And then just saying no to things. I think when you're disciplined and consistent and you stick with what you're doing and you stick with the plan, which I don't advise doing your own coaching if you're doing a show because you're going to question if you're doing the right thing. How many
Yeah.
times in my mind I was
100%.
just like, oh, it could be beneficial if I have some extra carbs today, or I do a refeed, and then it'll, give my body a little bit of a boost, and the grip on my fat stores will be loosened somewhat, and like so all this stuff is going through my mind. But I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stick with this. So then I know if it works or not. And I'm like, if it doesn't
Hmm.
work, it doesn't work. So that's what I did. I stood with that, and the calories came down little by little. Try to keep my protein was high. My protein kept going actually higher as you're dieting down, which helps retain muscle. The
Hmm.
fats I tried to keep consistent throughout the entire thing because the majority of what our body needs is fat. All of our cells are covered in a membrane which is made of fat. Fat
Yeah.
is and cholesterol are used for hormones, every hormone in your body. So these are all like an important thing. So when people cut out, oh, my fat's really low, my carbs are really low, I'm like, dude, you're asking for problems. So
Yeah.
I'm taking what I know and I'm putting it into this process. And so I just started to bring down, that's literally all I did. I started at 3,000 calories and I started to bring my carbs down little by little. I think I only changed
Hmm.
my diet like 3 times. It was like every 3 or 4 weeks. Like, okay, I'm doing this. My body adapts to it. Boom, I'm going to change something else. I brought the carbs down. Cardio went up a little bit. And I just stick with that the whole time. And
Yeah.
so that's what did it. And then my last show where, I mean, I was probably around like 5% body fat, I want to say, maybe even more. It was enough to win the show, so I didn't really care. But
Yeah,
it
absolutely. That's
was,
all that matters.
yeah, I had a different approach with that because I hired a coach and he just kind of looked at me and would adjust things as I went. I didn't want to think about it. I just wanted to like put the work in, put my head down, and get through it, and that's what I did. But I started to train for that show more like an athlete, which was exciting. So we had this hill that my coach would take me to. It was like 45 degrees, like, and it was kind of paved, kind of not, but we would do sprints up
Yeah.
that hill. He had like a tire that he, tied around my waist, like to a rope, and
Hmm.
I would just drag that thing up the hill. And so I trained like a track athlete, which was really fun for me because it brought back the training days from high school. That I'm not
Mm.
just in the gym; I'm an athlete. And he's like I coach my guys as athletes because that's what you are. If you're just in the
Yeah.
gym and you're just on the stair stepper doing cardio, he's like, no, the guys at the pro level are doing this stuff. You just don't see it. Like they're
Mm.
doing this extra stuff to get that detail, to get that really,
Yeah.
really good detail. So that's what I did for my last show. I mean, we can go in a bunch of different directions, but that's kind of summing up like getting to that lower body fat percentage. It was really just radical consistency and having a plan.
Yeah. And that's the most impressive thing. And I think a lot of people would be shocked when they hear you say it was a 12 to 13 week process, because I don't think most people understand that you can make that shift in like 12 to 13 weeks. You can just be like cut up from the floor up, and
Mhm.
you can make just like you said, that decision to have this plan, stick to it. And it's not a complicated plan. Like, I'm sure you weren't having to, like you said, you adjusted your calories maybe two, three times, and
Mhm.
you weren't having to, well, maybe you were weighing your food, but I'm sure at a certain
Oh
point
yeah.
you understood, like you could look at something and say, oh, that's probably like so many grams of this, or like that's probably so many ounces of that,
Yep.
and put your food together in a way that you're able to consistently lose that weight. And it's
Mhm.
just like set like a flint on where you're going, and just
Mhm.
that decision, like, okay, this is the goal. At the end of it, this is where I'm going to be. And so what were the hard parts for, like, and I know you said that questioning yourself, which is,
Mhm.
I've done a cut maybe 4 or 5 times, and that's always the hardest part. Like, if you don't
Mhm.
have someone telling you what you're doing, or like reassuring you that this is why this is going to work, and you're just telling yourself like, okay, I found this on the internet, I think this is right. And then you're in those times where you're just like starving, and
Mhm.
don't you want the goal, but you also don't know how, if you're messing this up. And so, like, how do you
Mhm.
get through those situations?
Yeah, that's where, I mean, it was really a lot just a mental game as you
Mm.
get through it. It's so much more mental than it's like of course there's the physical component to it because I mean, you're hungry. Like you get to that point where it's breaking through the wall of prep or any type of diet. And when I say that, it's you when you first start dieting, like I mean, most people know that if they're in the gym consistently, you have like that fullness, right? Because you're eating.
Yeah.
You have the roundness
Hmm.
in your muscles. The more muscle you have, the more like round you're going to look. You feel big. You got a really good pump at the gym, and that's pretty consistent. When you switch over into a fat loss protocol, then that starts to diminish. And within the
Yeah.
first month or so, you're not you're not like I mean you're going to be tapping into fat loss stores here and there, but if when you look in the mirror, you're not going to see much change whatsoever. And I think for me, it was getting through that where I had myself covered like all the time. I was like, I know this is going to work because it's worked for so many other people, like my plan and what I've set
Mm.
out. Like I can't be distracted by what I see. So I had to
Yeah.
stay covered even at at the gym because I hated feeling small and all of that. So within the first month or so, you don't see enough body fat loss yet, and your muscles are depleted because your carbs are lower. So you're in this like awkward skinny fat stage.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
you're like, am I even doing the right thing? And this is where most people they hit this wall. It's like around the 4 week mark somewhere in there, especially if you have some extra muscle. Men are the worst at this. Like women can kind of get through it, but us guys are the worst at this because we want to feel big or we want to be
Yeah.
lean, but it's right in there around the 4 week mark where it's just like, man, I look terrible, compared to what I used to. I don't fill out my shirt like I did, and I can't even see my abs yet really. And so I think that was a really tough piece for me mentally. And I think for me, just surrendering all to the Lord during this process, that's something I feel like it's my unfair advantage compared to, other people that don't know the Lord. I mean, we could talk about this, it's just inviting him into what I'm doing because like he is, as a good father wants to enjoy giving gifts to his children and what they want to do, things that are exciting. Like all of us have gifts, all of us have things that we enjoy, like as far as hobbies or the work that we do, the work that we put forth. Like I believe it was this mentality shift that like the father loves seeing his children excited for what he's given them, right?
Hmm.
So this type of mentality has been, it's grown over the years. But during that time, when I was dieting down, I think it's staying connected with the Lord and seeing the big picture of this. Like, yes, I want to get lean. Yes, I want to, achieve these different things. But if I realize that my strength is not from myself, it's from Him, I can surrender that over. It's like, Lord, I need you today. How many times I sat in my car, like for 5 to 10 minutes outside in the parking lot before walking into the gym just to get my mind right. Like,
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how many times it happened, especially towards the end when you're tired, when you're depleted, when your strength isn't what it was before, and you're getting through the process. Like, I had to pull up my phone, get on YouTube, watch motivational videos of like lifting, get in prayer, like surrender it over to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, I need you to spot me on some of these things because it's gonna be tough. It's like I think those getting through those different periods. I'd say that 4 week period was the first hurdle of getting over, and then the last few weeks is when it really starts to show up. But it's like I said, my goal is to have great workouts the entire time. If you're having terrible workouts at the beginning because you're lacking energy, you're probably not eating enough. You're probably lacking micronutrients and minerals and all sorts of things like that. But when you get to the end, it's not healthy. Like let's be real. Like when you're getting down to that lower body fat percentage, it just is what it is. The last like 2 maybe 3 weeks, you're gonna feel terrible. Because
Yeah.
you're pushing your body into this realm that it's not meant to stay in. So you have this small
Hmm.
window of like, I'm going to feel terrible, but once I get to show day and I start to fill out, I'm going to look insane. And that's what
Yeah.
happens, when you have it like that. But it can't be sustained at that lower body fat percentage. And the people that do it, their body is screaming from the inside, whether you know it or not. It is. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And so like there's also that phase at the end where you're like flat. Like most people call it like
Mhm.
that's the I guess term where your muscles aren't filled out, the glycogen's completely gone, like
Mhm.
you're lean but you don't look jacked at the same time.
Mhm.
And so like before you do that refeed, I can't imagine like I've never done a show, but I can't imagine having done all that work for like 8 to 10 weeks and then you look in the mirror and you're just like, is this it? Like am I just
Yeah.
is this what I'm going to bring to the stage? And
Yeah.
like having to so what is that feeling like when you go through the refeed?
Oh, dude, it's the best. It's the best. And I was thankful during that time when I first started competing that I didn't have a coach doing my training or my nutrition, but my posing coach was a very, very big influence on me because he was one of those like old school, like OG bodybuilding guys. And I mean, if it wasn't for, I gotta like throw this in there, if it wasn't for him teaching me how to pose, I wouldn't have won those shows at all because posing is the whole other side of it that most people don't put their effort into. The training and the nutrition is just 50% or maybe
Yeah.
less, honestly, because if you don't know how to show your
Hmm.
physique, you're done. But
Yeah.
I had his support during all this because I would be posing more and more as I got closer to the show. So I have other eyes on me showing like, okay,
Hmm.
this is how you're looking and you're getting detail, like especially in my abs was like really getting like dialed in. And I remember telling him, I'm like, man, I feel so like tiny and small. And he kept reassuring me. He's like, dude, don't worry about it. Like this is once you get your food like back into you, like you're gonna blow up like a balloon and you're gonna feel great. You're gonna feel amazing. So he's like, just put your head down and get through all of this. And And that was, I mean, it was tough, but I'm glad I had that reassurance from somebody that had done this before. And he's like, it
Hmm.
was the encouragement that like you have the physique, so just do what you need to do because like you can do well with this. So that was really encouraging. But yeah, getting through that last little bit, it was once I started to eat, and everyone does this differently, right? Some people cut like salt going into the show, which is dumb. Like the way I see it is like if your body is fighting you because you're doing something because it wants this balance of homeostasis. It wants a balance of water inside your cells and outside of your cells at all times. So if you try to manipulate that and like so you can get that dry, grainy look on your skin by like pulling all the water into the cells, your body is still trying to keep water outside of the cells at the same time. So it's like we have to
Yeah.
understand what the body wants and not to manipulate too many variables because there's so many guys that will they're like, man, I did all this stuff before my show or when I was dieting down for a photo shoot or something. And by the day of, I was so flat. Like, I didn't feel full. I couldn't get a pump to save my life. But the next day, after they have a burger and some fries or something and they're in the gym, they look amazing. They feel
Yeah.
amazing. And I'm like, well, it's because you're pulling out all the stuff that your body needs, or maybe you didn't refill as much as you thought. And I was,
Hmm.
I'm glad I did this because my first show I tested. I wanted to know from as flat as a pancake, as flat as I could possibly be. I was so depleted, no more glycogen left in my muscles whatsoever. And I was like, I didn't even want to look at myself in the mirror because I was like, I look like, first of all, I look like a skeleton because my face is like sunken in and like I have no more fat in my face at all. And I did not like the prep face that I got. And
Hmm.
so I'm lean and that became great. I love looking at seeing abs and veins and all of that. But I wanted to test how many carbs it would take to go from zero to completely full. Like
Hmm.
I was like, I want to know what that number is. First of all, because
Yeah.
that was my first show, and I have another show in a week. So if I
Oh,
deplete
wow.
down, I'm going to know exactly how many carbs I need to put back into my body in order to feel my best. So that's what I
Hmm.
did, and it took I think it was 2,000 grams of carbs to
Oh,
fill.
wow.
It was right around there from what I tracked on my fitness pal, and that I mean obviously taking into account movement, and so you're adding back like extra calories day by day. So the people that are like, oh, I'm gonna get filled out within a day, like good luck.
No.
Like good
Yeah.
unless you have an IV hooking up to your veins and you're putting glucose right into your bloodstream to be stored. Like it's not gonna, it's gonna be really hard to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I went through all that and started to fill up. And so after that first show, I was probably about 80% full in that first show. I didn't want to overdo it. I was like, okay, I want my
Hmm.
detail, which I'm very thankful I did that. And then going into the next show, I was like, okay, I have a little bit more room because on my drive home, my 2 hour drive home after the show, I went and I got like a Little Caesars pizza. It was like the only thing that was open at the time, and I just killed the whole pizza on the drive home, like it was nothing. I was so
Yeah.
hungry. I was just like, wow, just ate the whole thing and I was fine. My stomach was good. It's not like it messed with me or whatever. And I felt awesome. I looked amazing the next day. I was like, okay, I have a little bit more in the tank that I could have, filled up with.
Hmm.
So I took that in, and I mean, once you have that sodium, you do have water in there. A lot of guys manipulate their water way too much. Because I'm like, if you look good in the gym the next day after you've had sodium, water, like food, then
Hmm.
like you're still going to look good, right? So that was the goal, is to have that. So it was great. I mean, you feel like $1 million when you have that, and that's
Hmm.
why a lot of guys will schedule photo shoots right after a show because you're the leanest that you've been. It probably won't stay there for very long, and now you're really really full and you're tan and all of that. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's it's a process, but it feels great.
Yeah. Nice. And you talked about, using the Lord as your spotter as you
Mhm.
were going through this process. So what were some of the verses or books in the Bible that you went to get that strength to get through those hard times?
Man, I'm looking back through it. It was a mixture of a lot of things. I got in the habit of going through Psalms and Proverbs every day,
Hmm.
and just the wisdom through it all, right? It's the daily type of wisdom. I think it was a Proverbs in the morning, Psalms at night, and just filling myself constantly, with the word. I don't think I really honed in on one specific thing. It was more so of looking at examples because the Old Testament is so great with stories, and I
Hmm.
love looking at old stories of of David or Joseph is that's the whole story of Joseph was a favorite of mine, and any type of like resiliency. I pulled a lot from those stories and really trusting in the Lord when you can't see the end, right? Or
Yeah.
you seem like things are unfair because life is going to seem unfair. But if you hold like this grudge against stuff that is unfair, you're gonna, you become bitter and resentful and all that. So I think it was a lot of different, verses, and I listened to a lot of pastors during that time, from what I remember,
Mm.
and still do. Listen to sermons, not just going to church, but listening to other pastors and other sermons that aren't in my current city, and just filling myself with the Word and filling myself with this revelation from the word that the Lord is giving these other people. So I think having that constant inflow was the biggest part. And looking back on it, I wish I did more. I'm not going to sit here and say that like I was doing everything I should back then. Of course, we all wish we could have done more or done things differently when we look back, because the mentality I have now and the understanding I have now, especially as my identity, I wouldn't have put so much into trying to prove things to people or to prove things to myself, that it's this surrender over to the Lord, and that everything is a blessing, right? Like I want to do well, I want
Yeah.
to succeed, but I
Hmm.
wouldn't have put so much pressure on trying to prove anything, to anybody. So, but when it came to the word and all of that, it was such a mixture. I don't think I could hone in on anything specific, but a lot of Old Testament stories, Psalms and Proverbs, and I think my favorite book of the Bible is James, and because
Ah,
there's so many nuggets of wisdom in there that you could take one verse and go apply it right now. Like there's so
hmm.
much stuff in there. You take one chapter, there's like 10 things that you could start to do. And I was like, I like applicable things. Like I like simple things. So I think that's why I've gravitated towards that. So there was a time period there where I was like, I'm gonna read James the whole thing every day for a month, and it
Yeah.
changed. It changed my life, man. Doing that. So I recommend that to anybody. Like you during your study time, if you want to do that for a whole month, like read the whole book of James over and over and over again every day for a month. Like
Yeah.
it'll change you.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of scripture memory, and James was one of the first books I ever wanted to like memorize the entire book. I didn't get the entire book. I think I got the first two chapters, but still,
Wow.
I mean, just like the first chapter where it says, "Serve God, the Lord Jesus Christ, and 12 tribes scattered among the nations. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance."
Immediately.
And that,
Look at that.
yeah,
Immediately, right away. Yeah.
and it is just that whole book, like from how your behavior should be,
Mm-hmm.
how your speech should be, how you should think about things. Like James is just, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you have any pastors right now that you're following, or like that you give to your clients to say, like, hey, if you need motivation during this time, or if you need just that something to get through, like, who are you sending people to?
So that's something that's changed so much over the years, because I think as believers we go through this spiritual growth and sanctification process, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
certain seasons, like back then when I first started competing, I could listen to the what I see now as like the surface level preachers and pastors that are just like, I mean, we can look back and say they were like watering down the gospel in certain ways, but at that time
Mm-hmm.
period for me, like God can speak through anyone, right?
Yeah,
Regardless of where their heart is at, He could speak through and give revelation to His people, to the body of Christ through anybody. So
yeah,
at that time in my life, I remember, man, it was so crazy. This isn't, I haven't listened to him in years and years and years, but it's so crazy because I hear so many people, they talk bad about pastors and preachers. And understandably, when things are false, like
mm-hmm.
100%, not
Yeah,
saying that. But there was a time period of my life where it was the roughest that I'd ever been. Like it was financially, it was with my family, like it was just one of those dark seasons. I think we've all had some like that. I had to listen to Joel Osteen like 3 to 4 times a day for like two
yeah,
months. like just because I needed encouragement. That's what I needed.
Mm.
It wasn't about like, the gospel and being saved and all that. That wasn't like on my mind. It's like the Lord saved me. I need encouragement right now. I need
Yeah.
like something. And so I got a lot. The Lord spoke through Joel like more than I ever thought he could. And so I was constantly listening to his message. So in that season of my life, like the Lord really used those messages to just get me through that hump and to really seek him. I didn't want to seek anything in the world. So I was like, well, if you're speaking through him, I'm going to keep doing that. So in that season, it's like I was listening to him and I think Stephen Furtick at the time. And it's grown so much over these years of there's one, it's not so much like motivational, but like I've gotten to the place now in my walk with the Lord where I don't want to be like encouragement is good, but
Mm-hmm.
I want the like the discipline of the Holy Spirit. Like I'm hungry for what the Lord has for me and I want to be set apart. I want to be sanctified. And every example that I can think of in the Bible, there was this setting apart. There was this sanctification process. I think of Joseph, right? He goes through all these different trials because the Lord is cultivating him and teaching him and doing all these things in preparation for his purpose and his mission. And so if I listen to a message and it's just feel good, like those are great. And it was great for me at a certain time. But now like I want to hear the message that like digs in, right? That
Yeah.
provides conviction for me to change and to grow in Christ. And someone that's
Mm-hmm.
not as popular, but really like every message is just like this is how I should walk every day as a believer is Dan Moeller. And if people don't know of him, they know of Todd White. And Todd gets so much like flack from so many different things, but the people that say stuff about Todd don't actually listen to what he says or don't have never listened to a sermon that he said, saying the
Yeah.
prosperity gospel and all that. I'm like, it's the furthest thing from it. And so Dan was the one that brought Todd to Christ. He was like his mentor growing up, or when he converted at like 33 or whatever he was. And so Dan, like the way he lives his life, anyone that watches a sermon from him, he'll travel around. He has social media, but he doesn't run it at all. He doesn't accept
Mm-hmm.
money from people. Like he's so kingdom minded with everything that he does that like, and he's so unoffended by everything that he has so much the love of Jesus in him that he tells stories all the time of where like he got in a car accident, brand new truck. The truck was paid for by the church or by other people, and he's like, I had every reason to be upset that this is my brand new truck. I've only had it a couple weeks or whatever, and like this person came out of nowhere and like hit me and this and that. We can get so caught up in selfishness and what we
Yeah.
want and complaining of when these situations happen. But in his mind, because the Lord has just completely changed him, that he is looking for opportunities to speak life into people and to share the gospel every chance he gets. It doesn't matter if he's at church, it doesn't matter if he's at a gas station, it didn't matter that he was, in a car accident. He got out of the car and the person that was driving, there was I think a family of people that was in the other car, and he gets out and the person driving was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, like thinking that he's going to come up and yell at them, right?
Mm.
And he ends up consoling them, and there's a little girl in the back seat that was just like trembling because you've just got in a car accident, it's scary, right?
Yeah.
And no
Yeah.
one was like injured or anything, but he's just like he asked I think the mom who was driving, and I think grandma was in the front. He's like, is your daughter okay or whatever? She's like, yeah, she's fine. He's like, is it okay if I just sit here and with you guys until the police get here and all that? And he's like, and she's like, yes, that's fine, that's fine. So he gets in the side of the truck or wherever that they were in, and she crawls over to him, just
Huh.
naturally. I think I'm not even sure how old she is, but and he holds her. He holds her and he prays over her. He prays over everyone in the car. And I think the mother that was driving was like, "Why are you being like this? Why are like I just destroyed your truck, beautiful truck. We just hit your truck or whatever." And he brought peace to the entire situation. And
Mm.
the cop that showed up that day to for the accident and everything to give them their statement, what happened, he he starts talking to he sees the wreck, and then he talks to the family, and then he talks to Dan, and he's just kind of taken back Like when you have the love of Jesus pouring out of you, people notice. It's different.
Yeah.
Something's different about you. And he's sitting there and he's talking to him and he's just like, man, this is like, and so Dan starts to tell him about Jesus because he's like, I don't understand. Like, he's like, this, most people are angry right now. They're tense. They're whatever. And the whole family is like calm. Dan's calm. He's like, it's okay, man. It's just a truck. Like, I can get another one. Like, the Lord will provide that. And the guy's like, oh, well, I'm pretty sure he said like, oh, I'm an atheist. I don't believe that. And he's like, okay,
Mm.
yeah, that's fine and stuff. But he speaks over him, shares the gospel, shares the love of Jesus with this man. And he didn't think much of it after that. And to add to that, he was headed to another church to speak at that time. So he didn't get to speak because it was
Uh,
delayed. Everything was delayed. Fast forward, I don't even remember, you can't even hold me to this, of how long it was from when he went back and to that church. I think it was like 6 months later or something, if I'm trying to remember. It was a while later.
mhm.
So he's speaking at, I believe it was that church that he was supposed to go to. It was close by. And he goes through his whole thing, he goes through his whole sermon, and he does kind of this altar call and stuff at the end. That cop was going through a lot of pain in his body, was going through, some stuff in his life, needed healing, needed breakthrough. He got invited by somebody because it was his last resort. He had done everything that he
Mm.
possibly could. And his friend is like, dude, just come to this church, come to this healing service. There's this healing service that's going to be happening on Sunday night. And so he's in the very back of this service. And Dan tells this story of being at this intersection, and the cop was a part of it and stuff. And this cop comes up to the front at the very end and he's like, I was that cop that you spoke to
Gosh.
that day. And today I'm getting emotional to talk about because it's so powerful, man. The love of Jesus is so powerful. When you fully surrender and you let go of selfishness, you let go of these things that you're holding on to, that it's all about me. This man came up
Mhm.
and was completely healed in body. The Lord healed him right then and there, and he was set free and he surrendered his life to the Lord. Like just
Wow.
because of that one decision that Dan had to release all selfishness in that moment, when he had every reason and every right to be angry and upset and all that, he released it. And it's like the Lord could have been after, that little girl, I guarantee, was impacted that day. That family was impacted that day. But the Lord was after that cop that showed up.
Mm.
And he knew that months later he was going to hear him again and realign their paths, and that this man would be set free. Like,
Yeah.
that is the love of Jesus. And I have to share that. I mean, there's so many other stories that he has. This is daily for him. Like, and I'm so inspired when I see that like, this is what being a Christian looks like. Like, this
Mhm.
isn't just a Sunday morning type of faith where we're just, this is like, if I'm in the gym and I have an opportunity to speak to somebody and pray over somebody, I don't want to be so caught up in my own thing with my music on, like thinking, oh, this is just about me. This is my time. It's my time away from work and the rest of my life that can be stressful. Like, I need to be open to what the Lord is saying because he wants to love on his people, his sons
Yeah.
and daughters that are lost, that need encouragement, and to be so in tune with the Spirit that he's like, I need you to turn off your music right now and go talk to that man. I need you to pray over
Mhm.
that man. Like, that's what we're called to do, right?
Yeah.
And I say all that to, like, the fitness life. That's the blessing that the Lord has given me of being in the gym and being a coach and all those things. But now it's so much more of like, how is he using that to reach his people? Because there's so
Mhm.
much more than what we are just doing. It's not about us. So, as a long-winded type of answer, like, I think listening to Dan and even Todd, like, I mean, Todd's stories are insane of like just walking out the gospel and loving people. Like, it's so different to what we're used to seeing because so many believers don't walk that way, like, because they're
Mhm.
carrying roots of offense. They're carrying all the stuff that's weighing them down, and they're so focused on their own stuff and how the devil is beating them up and like all these things, which, like, yes, it's hard, but when we get healed, when we finally like go through that process and allow the Lord to pull out those roots, then we could start to walk the way the Lord has called us to walk in this life of faith. So that's what empowers me. Like, now when I listen to stuff, like, I mean,
Mhm.
my wife and I listen to Dan all the time, and every time I feel like I'm kind of getting off track and I'm getting focused on my own issues, I'll go back and listen to Dan, and I'm like, wow, I'm being so selfish right now. This is crazy. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Dan's story, that's so relatable just because, and I think the one thing that people need to take from that story isn't his reaction to like this new truck, but new truck getting wrecked, but it's what happens next. Because whether it's a new truck or like a beat up car,
Hmm.
like getting upset in the moment of what someone has done is completely understandable.
Hmm.
But it's that next step of like, okay, now what do I do? And like, how do I handle this situation as a believer? And so that just the ability to put aside, like, yes, the truck's ruined. Yes, it's a brand new truck. I only had it for a few weeks. I feel like something's been taken from me. Those are all legitimate emotions and feelings to have. But it's like, what happens next is what's most important.
Hmm.
And so, like, his ability to do that, that was
Yeah.
insane.
Hmm.
So good. And
Hmm.
so, are you still competing now, or is it mostly coaching?
Mhm. Yeah, it's mostly coaching now. I know it's.
Okay.
I got to the point where when I switched over into classic physique, the newer division, that fit my body type way better. So when that came out, I was like, "Thank you, Lord!
Mm.
Like this is so much better for me." And trying to, so it's like now my legs were being judged, and it was fun. So I competed in that. I did two shows in that. My last show in 2018. I won the overall, which I was excited. That's what I wanted. I wanted to I want to be the best. I want to win this show. And winning that qualifies you for nationals, but being at, I think it was at 205 pounds completely flat for that show, and that's the most that I could weigh. Because
Goodness.
with classic physique, you go by height and weight. So my weight can't be a
Mm.
certain amount, which was new to me. I wasn't a wrestler or anything like that. I never had to make weight for anything in my life. So getting under 205 at that time was extremely hard to do. But going from that to like the national level and then going to the pro level, I'm in my mind of like, okay, well, how far do I want to take this? I've competed on the
Mm.
national stage before, and I know that there's some big boys that are up there, right?
Yeah.
I competed in Arizona, but you go out to like California or some stuff on the East Coast, those guys are it's a different ball game out there. Like Arizona's easy compared to especially California shows. And so I was like, is this something I really want to go into? Because I know when my body starts to fight me. The biggest I've been it was 230. I think it was 232, and I was like, I had a hard time breathing. Like sleeping was
Oh wow.
terrible. I felt like my body was like, dude, like you're not meant to do this. Like we're not trying to. That's to the point where you're like, okay, am I really going to go down this road? And that's where the drugs start to come in. If that's like if you're trying to become a professional, there's not many that can do it naturally. Some can, because
Yeah.
some have crazy, insane genetics. But I had to get to the point where I was like, okay, if I want to have kids one day, like, is this, and I had to surrender it to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, is this where you're calling me? And I felt like he was just like, no, there's other things that I want you to do now. And it doesn't mean he won't call me back to the stage at some point, because every time I see, an Arnold Classic or the Olympia come around, I'm like, oh man, I miss getting up there. I miss competing. I miss looking like that. Uh, but yeah, life just happened. And he called me like out of Arizona that I was living at the time, and then it was end of 2019. I moved to Georgia to be with my now wife. We ended up getting engaged. I mean, we went through the whole 2020 madness. End up getting engaged, then married, and now we moved to Charleston, South Carolina. So there's been a lot of stuff in between since when I competed and now that the Lord had to heal me from a lot of things, and He had to, get me on the right path for the bigger picture of what He has for me. So fitness has just been a
Mm.
catalyst for everything else that he's called me to do, which is really, really cool to see. So I've surrendered all of that. I'm like, Lord, I love the fitness lifestyle. I love competing, but if you call me into something else, that's what I'll do. And that's really the heart posture that I'm like, if we can all like adopt that, because I
Yeah.
fought it for so many years of like fighting that. But if we just surrender all of this, the Lord has so much more up ahead. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to possibly do that in the future. We'll see. But as of right now, it's just coaching and helping other men, optimize their physique, optimize their health, and of course get closer in their walk with the Lord.
Yeah. And that's the best thing. First of all, congratulations on your marriage.
Thank you, thank you. Best
I love
decision
it. I
ever,
love.
aside from accepting the Lord.
Yeah. Amen. And so, what is it that you feel called to now? Like, whenever you are coaching, and I know looking through your Instagram, looking through your website, It is building godly men and helping people get jacked and shredded, which you're a great example for. So, what is the calling that you have there?
So it's changed. It's like as I surrender this to the Lord, he gives me little pieces at a time, and I mean, I could take this opportunity to share the vision that the Lord gave with me that I feel like I've been
Yeah.
taking little bite-sized chunks or steps forward towards over the last, I mean, since I was 21. When I was 21 years old, I was working out in a church gym of all places, and I felt the Lord give me a vision for what He had for me. And like I was doing heavy like deadlifts at the time. I set the weight down. I turn around and there was like there was a Bible verse that was up on the wall, which was it was a really cool place to train. It was like a dungeon, but it was at a church. It was great. And I look at this verse on the wall. I believe it was from Isaiah, and I just get this thought, just boom, just put in my head, and it was about creating not just a gym, but more so of a campus that radiated the love of Jesus, but provided every type of solution for health and fitness that you can think of. Because just the gym itself can't do all that. It's a piece of the puzzle, but imagine going to a place that you can become motivated and inspired like within 5 minutes or less as soon as you walk in the door. And if that place has the favor of God and the anointing of God is resting on that place, when you walk in the door, you feel it, right? I think we've
Hmm.
all been in environments where the presence of God is there and you just know it. Like if you have a fitness environment like that, where it's the most inspiring atmosphere you've ever been in, and on top of that, it's the coolest gym you've ever been in your whole life, and you have everything you need there in one spot. Where I saw as the five different aspects of fitness. You have training, nutrition, supplementation, recovery, and mindset. Those are the big ones, and you can
Hmm.
add in like detox in there if you want to add another one. There's a couple other small ones, but those components of fitness, we would be able to tackle all of them through this type of campus. You would have a nutrition section. There can be a restaurant. We would have the meal prep services or teaching people how to eat the way they need to. The supplement stuff, that's easy. Taking care of those things, the right supplements that actually work for your body. The training portion is from the gym alone, right? So we're handling all these things. I mean, the recovery center is going to be absolutely incredible. So the Lord starts giving me all the stuff of like, wow, I'm like, God, this is big. This is it's going to cost a lot of money. Like, I'm just a coach. I've worked at plenty of gyms in my lifetime, but I don't know how to build something like this. And he's like, write the vision and make it plain. So I
Mm.
started at 21. I got home that day and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be cool. So I opened up a notebook and I wish I still had it. I don't know where it is. I wish I still had it. And I started to write down these different ideas, just stuff like an outline of like, oh, this is the general idea. This is the stuff I want in there. And it's grown over the years where God's like, when I give you the green light and I bring the right people around you, and then you can go because you're going to have the plan with it. And lately, he's been bringing that back to my attention because there was a few years there where I didn't even look at it. I didn't even look at the business plan.
Yeah.
It wasn't even on my mind. But the Lord called me into helping men, into like men's ministry, that like using fitness as a catalyst for all the other spiritual growth that needs to take place. Like the same thing he did in me, I felt him tell me that this is what we're going to use to help other men do the same. So I see that type of programming, my Kingdom Fit Academy program, which helps men grow physically and spiritually in their walk with the Lord within 16 weeks. We go through an entire process. Like I see that program being taught in a public atmosphere at this facility. And that's just a small piece. There's so many other things, but imagining an environment like that where I see the three different pieces of us. We are body, right? We have this flesh suit that the Lord gave us that we have to take care of. Like we
Yeah.
are spirit. Like that's if you get rid of this body, like our spirit is still there, and our spirit is eternal. Whether it's eternally like spending eternity with the Lord, or it's eternity in hell, like it's eternal, right? He gives us
Hmm.
a new body later, but we have our body, we have our spirit, and then we also have our soul, which is our mind, will, and emotions. And the Lord says that we have to renew our mind with the Word of God, right? This is a daily progressive process. So He helped me think, what is the one place potentially where all three pieces of you can be renewed? You're renewed at salvation in your spirit, right? Becoming saved. You're renewing
Yeah.
your mind by the Word of God and that being preached, right? And studying it and the Lord speaking to you through His Word. And then what about your body though? Like the one place that technically like all three of those in one place that they can be renewed is a fitness or a health facility like that is centered around Jesus. So our goal is to help people take care of this flesh suit, right? Because we only have so many years to live. So if God has called me to like 90 years, let's say, but my body expires at 75 years, that's 15 years of my life that God had ordained for me, but because of my choices, my bad choices and my health and my lifestyle or whatever, my body expired 15 years early. Like that's a
Mm.
problem. That's a problem. So it's like we have to
Yeah.
take this physical piece of us seriously and take care of this temple. So I was like, man, and so this vision keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I love sharing it with others who, believe in that same thing because the Lord is building a team of people and it's going to happen. Like, I mean, whether it's in my lifetime or my kids are the ones that see it come to pass, it will come to pass. And I truly believe the Lord is doing a mighty work in the world right now. He's bringing ideas, He's bringing downloads from heaven to His people. Like, we're seeing it in almost every industry. So I was like, if I'm able to have even just a small piece of that and lead that charge in the health and fitness space for the kingdom, that's what I want to do. So that's what's been on the forefront of my mind lately, and where God is taking it. Like I'm still coaching, still helping men grow in those ways. But right now, I'm kind of at this I want to say a crossroads, but it's at this standing still point where the Lord is like, he ever had you like, he's ever had you like stay still because He's doing a work that He needs you to wait for, and as
Hmm.
soon as that's ready, He's going to be like, go,
Yeah.
like in bringing the right people. That's where I feel like I'm at right now. So it's exciting. Like it's really, really exciting. Being still sucks sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's exciting for what God is going to do. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what He does in the fitness industry, and that's the vision that He's given me for the future, and I'm excited to roll with it.
Yeah, I love it. And so, if people feel called to this vision that you have, how can they get in touch with you?
So, I mean, the easiest way is through social media or email. I guess we could put that in the show notes of this if we want.
Hmm.
But like I check my messages on Instagram or on Facebook pretty much daily. So it's just under my name. Like on Instagram, it's just Mitch Muller, at Mitch Muller, and people think that my DMs are flooded. They're really not. It's it's easier to respond on there, so I see most of them. So that's
Okay.
yeah, so super easy to get in touch with me. I'm not really hard to get in contact with. So yeah, if there's anyone that shares that vision or partnering up, I get to meet some amazing people that the Lord is doing even even better stuff in their life than I feel like He's done done in mine like thus far, which is exciting. It's so cool to see.
Yeah, I love it. Man, well, I've so enjoyed this and got me pumped up to go and do something myself. And
Let's go.
so, man, thank you for being here, Mitch. And how can we pray for you? And is there anything else that you need?
No, I appreciate you having me on here, man. It's always exciting. I always get hyped up, even early in the morning, like we are right now, to talk about the Lord and talk about the vision going forward. Like that's what really gets me amped up. But yeah, I appreciate the prayer of everything going forward, right? The Lord
Yeah.
continuing to lead. I mean, not just me, but all of His people that He's calling to such a deeper place with Him. I truly feel that right now that like so many people have been kind of hovering on the surface, and He wants to take them deeper, and that
Mm.
encompasses so many things. But yeah, continuing to pray for me in that area, and for all of us because we all need that, and I
Yeah,
believe that's on the Lord's heart right now.
definitely. I'd love to have you back on to talk about that just because I feel the same way that there is some feeling of revival happening in
Mhm.
at least our country and around the world because it seems like we're getting past the post Christianity time in
Mhm.
America. It feels like we're kind of in the middle of it, getting out of it, and it feels
Yeah,
like there is a sense of revival and a recognition of, oh yeah, God is real. There is a reason that all of these truths have held true since the beginning of time, and so
Mhm.
yeah, I'd love to have you back on one day to talk about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Nice. All right, man. Well, have a great day.
You as well, Corey. Thank you so much, brother.